everybody. This is Reverend Heng. This is our second Buddha Dharma podcast, the second in a series of Sunday morning COVID-19 quarantine time substitutes for our regular meditation gathering here at the Gold Coast Dharma Realm. But today is Saturday, August 8th, and being that we are in that state of quarantine now, we're trying our best to come up with a substitute, which talks about Buddhism. We've gone through the meditation handbook, and we're done with that now, and we're going to fill in the time with our some graduated talks about the principles and the foundations and the practices of Buddhism. So often when I meet on Sunday mornings, I say to everybody, so let's just jump into it. What do you say? Here we go. Who's the Buddha? That's the question. Who's the Buddha? We're going to look at questions, principles, and then bring it up to the 21st century. First question here is, who's in charge of my life? Basic question. And next, something very dear to the hearts of young people worldwide, what is my potential for freedom, for genuine freedom? Do I have a choice of stories to tell about my life? Or am I just kind of born into a tribe and that's it for me? Good question. And bigger, deeper question, may not get to this one today. Wouldn't that be good if we could answer, where do we come from? Who's really the builder? Yeah. So, we're going to be talking, remember last week we talked about the Mahayana and the Theravada and these various yanas, the Vajrayana, and the bigger family of Buddhism, and also the notion of that moment when the prince became a seeker. So we're going to look at these points. We're going to talk about the Mahayana tradition, because that's the tradition that we belong to here at Gold Coast Dharma Realm. We're going to talk about the launch pad for the Bodhisattva, which is called the Bodhi Resolve, that wish for awakening. Then we're going to point out an essential core, the heartbeat, you could say, of the Bodhisattva path, which is virtue. And virtue translates as strength. So where does the Bodhisattva's incredible strength come from? It comes from his virtue, particularly his relationships. Yeah, how about that? Who would think, right? So, go right past this. And let's look at some perspectives on the Buddha after 2,500 years of watching Buddhists live their religion, now here in Australia, right? So there's the legend, the founding story that we tell about Prince Siddhartha. We looked into that last week. We talk about the hero's journey, particularly if you're a student of folklore and mythology, this notion that there's a journey that one takes from, you could say, innocent to initiate to traveler, pilgrim, and then to hero, which involves loss, it involves overcoming fear, it involves being wounded, right? Giving things up, sacrificing some of the closest things you care for a greater good. These aspects of the hero's journey, is that something you're all interested in? Maybe not. Maybe you just came to meditate. But this is another perspective, a way of looking at what the Buddha accomplished in his life. Our founding story, it's different in the different traditions. The Mahayana and the Theravada tell slightly different stories about what the prince did. So there's a lot to be learned from the different viewpoints, right? And then we're going to talk particularly about the inner experience of somebody who sets out to wake up. What happens in that process? So let's just look quickly at some of those nifty graphics from last week, right? We saw the prince up here on his elephant. There he is. And his elephant driver, rider, chauffeur, the beautifully adorned elephant, all the soldiers around looking absolutely awesome, right? But, who would think, in the midst of all this splendor and affluence, the prince's mind was starting to wake up, and he was asking himself some questions. Is seeking pleasure the ultimate purpose of my life? And running from pain, the ultimate annoyance in my life? Who am I, indeed? When I take off my turban and my gown, my prince's robe, and prepare to jump in the bath, who am I, right? Underneath the skin, who am I? Inside, good question. Where do I come from? Where am I going? Those are deeper questions, and not everybody asks those. Some people just, who's got the time? Life is real, life is tough, I gotta get to work, I have people to provide for. You know, who's got the time to wonder about those bigger questions? Well, ask the Prince of India, who had every material advantage, and none of them satisfied him. Good question. So what is freedom, ultimately? Can I do what I want, whenever I want to, as long as I want to do it? What can stop me? Well, a small virus can stop you, right? So that you can't breathe, actually, without dying. That'll cut your freedom back, won't it? Goodness, the prince's father did not want his son to think about these things. Okay, we covered this last week. Here's our burning house. We saw this. Our real situation, reality for us, is that we're actually just like living in a burning house. The world is burning up. We know that now. We play unaware in the burning house. Just parenthetically, this has probably never been explained as well as the parable of the burning house in the Lotus Sutra, the story of the elder who tries to bring his kids, his children and grandchildren, out of the house where they're playing, unaware that there's a fire in the house and it's burning down around them. How he manages to expediently extract them from the house is a great story in the Lotus Sutra. So you realize that life ends in death of the body, but something inside the body travels on, right? Birth, old age, sickness, death, and then a cultivator. Not a Buddhist monk, but a monk. These are called the four messengers that one by one arrived in front of the prince and helped him wake up. Okay, so birth, old age, sickness, death, reality, right? And then the monk, the cultivator. The prince sees him and says, "Who are you?" Cultivator says, "I'm a cultivator of the way." "Well, what do you cultivate?" He says, "Freedom from birth and death." "Who can do that?" He says, "Well, anybody can, and you will, so follow me." New chapter in the life of the prince. He cuts off his hair, says goodbye to his horse, leaves all security behind, heads off for the bush to find out whether or not he can beat mortality. Oh boy. We saw this photo, Master Hsuanhua and Ajahn Sumedho, one a farmer's son from Manchuria, and the other a middle-class boy from California who went off to the Peace Corps. And according to Master Hsuanhua, they've known each other for lifetimes and have been friends on the path in the past. So, no guarantee of success for the prince, no Buddha role model, no method, no security, right? Only a wish to wake up. A need to know the answer to his first question. Can suffering end? So the Buddha awoke to the truth of what? Now this is one of those summaries. You can summarize what the Buddha taught in a variety of ways, but one of them certainly is just talk about the middle way. The middle way is the way that avoids extremes. It's the Tao, they say, that word, Chinese word. The Tao of nature. Too much and too little come to be the same thing, right? Neither luxury nor excessive asceticism. And this is a fascinating part of the Buddha's story, which includes him looking like this at one point in the 6 years before he woke up. Somebody had pointed out to the prince that if he was able to end desire, he could end his reincarnation, his samsara. Well, where did desire come from? He said, food. So he decided to eat the minimum. Well, this was the result. And he was so weak he couldn't meditate. So he decided that was not the answer. That was, he had lost the middle way. So at that point, he acknowledged the mistake, turned around, and came back to the middle way, discovered his mind. So I think that's a key message that I really appreciate in Buddhism, which is you can make a mistake and recover. It's not that one strike and you're out, right? Not like that. So, okay, now we've got, we're at a point in, this is kind of where we take off into today's new material. And let me just show you. We say, the question is, who's the Buddha? And the answer is, well, it depends who you ask. There are images, statues, paintings of the Buddha that come from Gandhara, which is the Hellenistic, the Grecian world, where it touches India, through Iran, I might mention, Persia. And what we see is, in the 1st century of the Common Era, there are Buddhas who look like this. Not very Oriental, not very Asian, not very Indian at all, right? They look really Greek, Grecian. Look at that. These are, if anything, closer to the view of the Buddha than the Chinese view, or the Korean, or the Japanese, right? But every culture interprets the Buddha for themselves. This is Gandhara style. What creates a Buddha? How do you go from prince to humble ascetic seeker to awakened human being? One is you have to want to, bodhi resolve. 2, you have to have a method, practices and vows. 3, you have to work at it. And you finally get to this place called perfect in both blessings and in wisdom, which is the Buddha. Okay, when we get to Buddhist, the cultural stories of the Buddha, there's lots and lots of numbers. Buddha by the numbers. There's all kinds of lists of practices. There's the single truth, right? There's the 2 truths. There's the 3 poisons and the threefold method of awakening. There's the 4 noble truths. There's the 5 limbs. There's the 5 roots, the 5 powers. There's the 6 perfections. There's the 7 bodhi shares. There's the Eightfold Path, the 9 stages of a decaying corpse, and the 10 practices of Samantabhadra, and so forth, right? Okay, so way, way too much. This will all be on the quiz, by the way, so I want you to take notes. Yeah. So, look at these, the Buddha's virtues. 2 adornments, 3 bodies, 4 modes, 5 eyes, 6 powers, 7 treasures, Eightfold Path, and so forth, right? So, most of all, if we want to talk about it, we got 2 two outstanding qualities, wisdom and compassion, both of which come right out of your human nature. I like that. That it's not from born into a certain caste or with a certain surname or a certain socioeconomic role that you become a Buddha. Nope. It's that you cultivate these qualities in your own nature. Alrighty. Yep. Okay. Alrighty. We're going now to do a little bit of music. Remember, I talk about successful podcasts and how often we want to feed the right brain so the left brain can digest. Let's see if that works. See what you think. We've just passed Guanyin Bodhisattva's holiday this weekend. So, let's chant Guanyin's name. In English, of course. Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. 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 Music for digesting Dharma principles by, right? Alrighty. Two outstanding qualities. So what happened? Well, the Buddha started teaching and people started to gather and they had to find a roof for their heads and food to feed them. And so Buddhism began. Much different from the founder, the Buddha's intent. What was the founder's intent? Well, he wanted people to ask the questions that he asked. And he said, first of all, the story goes that the Buddha didn't expect anybody was going to want to follow him successfully, that it was just too hard to stick to the middle way, to open that wisdom and compassion. But then people begged him. He said, please share what you've learned. We can do it. And so he indeed decided finally to start teaching. And pretty soon he had followers. They say at the peak there were 1,250 monks who had to be fed around the Buddha. And he taught for 49 years after his awakening. So cultural influences began to shape the practices. Indian Buddhism became Indian. Chinese Buddhism took over Korean, Japanese. Australian Buddhism is going to have its own style someday, right? So we have this sense of southern, northern, Tibetan traditions. And now, my goodness, there are aspects of Buddhism that completely outshine the principles of the Dharma. There are some things when you go to there'll be a cultural fair up in Brisbane or down in Sydney on the Buddha's birthday, and how much of what goes on there has anything to do with the prince in the woods? And some, right? You hope so. But a lot of what we meet in Buddhism that comes out of Asia here to the West now are wearing cultural trappings, right? And as we get started here in Australia, I think it's really important to recognize what is something that was added by the individual cultures. Sri Lanka, for example, Thailand, for example, right? And Korea, and Vietnam, for example. They all have their specific overlays on the message of the Buddha. And nothing wrong with that. That's certainly, it's going to happen here in Australia at some point. But if we only see the frosting and don't understand the cake underneath, we can sometimes wind up using our time unwisely or not really getting to the heart of the issue. So our teacher, our founder, Master Hsuan Hua, when he brought Buddhism to North America from China, he was really clear about getting rid of what was Chinese Buddhism. He said, I am not teaching you Chinese Buddhism. And then he would say, I'm also not teaching you Indian Buddhism, he would say, or Korean, or Sri Lankan, or Burmese, He'd say, I'm teaching you your nature. I'm teaching you the mind. So, that's interesting, kind of radical. What is this? That is a cultural overlay. Setting fire to 60 incense sticks at once, shaking them at the Buddha, perfuming the Buddha's face black with sticky incense smoke. Real devotion? No. Culture. That's just the way it developed. And I might add, if you go to China now, to mainland China, you get 3 sticks of incense, and that's all. A brand new law, nationwide, 3 sticks only. You have to decide which Buddha or Bodhisattva you're going to offer your incense sticks to. And of course, this set off a storm of protest from whom? From the people selling the incense. They said, you've condemned us to poverty. How can you do that? And the Chinese said, well, go sell flowers. They stuck with it, which I think is an improvement, actually, because there's no benefit from steaming the Buddha's face black. That somehow the Buddha is happier the more incense you shake at him. Not the case. Oh, look at this. My goodness. Hell banknotes. Yeah. For spending in the underworld so that your ancestor has an easier time, can buy more stuff for his what? His ghost? Nah, culture. This is all culture. Right? Oh my goodness. Yeah, and they're pious. Palms together as the smoke rises up. It's Thailand. Boy, oh boy. Here's another one. The fat, happy Buddha. Children climbing all over him, covered with coins, carrying a cloth bag. Looking like Santa Claus, right? Do we have an image of... Yes, we do. Ready? Let's do this one more time here. Who is this? Is this the Buddha? Well, for a lot of people worldwide, when they think Buddha, they think this guy, right? There's the Buddha. The Buddha's fat. The Buddha is really, really heavy. When he's smiling, he must be friendly, right? Okay, what is this? This is an iconographic image. Money, right? Give me more money. I want it. Yeah? Oh my goodness. Kind of terrifying, right? How could he be so big? What are these kids doing climbing on the Buddha? Well, he's still smiling. So who is this? This is one artistic image of Maitreya Bodhisattva before he becomes the next Buddha. And in the sutra that we explained, called the Flower Garland Sutra, Maitreya doesn't look like this at all. He's not fat. He's not covered with money and children or a hemp bag. Doesn't look like Santa Claus, right? Well, where did it come from, and who's the real Maitreya? Well, the real Maitreya, please sit down, right, and cross your legs. So the real Maitreya looks just like other bodhisattvas. He's thin, He is compassionate and kind. He is there to teach us how to be patient, right? So, all right, interesting. So my goodness, the more I talk, the more confused everybody gets, right? So what's the point here? The point is there's lots of ways to look at the Buddha. Lots of cultural overlays. And it comes down to the question, who is the Buddha? Right? Who is the Buddha? Let's take a look. I'm going to shift my slideshow to this one right here. Here we go. If we had to say, what did the Buddha wake up to? Certainly one of the answers would be cause and effect. Cause and effect. That was kind of the principle of the universe that the Buddha discovered. Okay, we're still recording here. One moment. There we go. If I ask you, if I said, who's in charge of your life? We get a bunch of different answers. And the Buddha, one of his answers was cause and effect is in charge of my life. Not God's will, not luck, not chance, right? But actually my own deeds. What I do with my body, my mouth, and my mind. This is a very different story than 90% of the world's religions. And I want to make that point right here. Because, 90% of the world's religions have a supreme being in the center. A theos, right? A god. Or a goddess. Or numerous gods. And those beings, those supreme beings, are outside. We negotiate our salvation with those beings, right? The Buddha had a fundamentally different story. He said, no, it's inside. And you can't be saved by anyone else. It depends on what I do with my body, my mouth, and my mind. Good seeds that I plant. Bad seeds that I compost, that I recycle. That's what saves us. Well, that's a different story. And I spent 10 years at the Graduate Theological Union, that's UC Berkeley's seminary on Holy Hill, the campus to the north of Berkeley, and taught Buddhist Christian dialogue. Had numerous opportunities to look into the conversation between Buddhism and other faiths. And these are some of the principles that came up, which I thought was fascinating. This is, I think, good to talk about here, and maybe folks have got to fasten your seat belts. We're going to go deep a little bit, but let me talk about this, because when we're asking the question, who is the Buddha, and this faith, this practice that we have centered around the Buddha, who is he actually? Is he the fat Maitreya? Is he the middle way? What's the story? So one way to look at him is put him side by side with religious schemes that we already are familiar with. For example, in Buddhism, orthodoxy is less important than orthopraxy. Ortho, right. Doxy, words, speech, declarations, right? Truth, right truth. Well, in Buddhism, you can go all the way to Buddhahood without establishing that you believe that the Buddha is right. You don't have to set up faith or lack of faith. What is important is right practice, right? You don't have to get the words right. There's no such thing as wars, civil wars in Buddhism over interpretations of dogma, right? The Shiites and the Sunnis going to war and killing each other over whether so-and-so was in the cave with his wife in the 13th century, etc. Who passed on the right teaching? That's not an issue that Buddhists worry about. Scholars maybe, but not the actual practitioners. But what does matter is, do you put to rest greed, anger, and delusion in your own mind? Do you resolutely cultivate precepts, samadhi, and wisdom? That will carry you down the path. That's different, isn't it? Okay, what else? The sutras, the teachings of the Buddha, are not done. They didn't arrive by revelation from on high down through a prophet to humanity waiting below. That's not where they came from. Where did the Buddha's teachings come from? They came from a man, the prince, who looked deeply into his nature and woke up, and then spent the next 49 years explaining answers to questions that people brought to him. That's interesting. So we have the sixth patriarch, Great Master Huineng, a Tang Dynasty monk from the 10th century, who had been separated from the Buddha by 1,000 years, but still did the same thing the Buddha did. He looked within his nature, and out came teachings that are widely recognized as the Six Patriarchs' Dharma Jewel Platform Sutra. Potentially, if any one of us wakes up tonight or tomorrow, right, you would be empowered to deliver the next sutra. It's right there as a potential. So that's very interesting. The teachings come from within, right? They're not bequeathed down from a higher being. Interesting. The hierarchy of the clergy is horizontal, not vertical. Okay? If you think about the Roman Catholic Church, for example, which has the Holy Father, the Pope, and then cardinals, and then bishops, and then priests, cardinals, archbishops, bishops, and priests, and then lay devotees down into the pews, right? The ordinary Catholic. Buddhism has the ordained Sangha, but the ordained Sangha are people who abide by training rules and live in a way that they minimize their needs in the real world so they can spend all their time focusing on the cultivation of the inner world, right? That's different. So in any assembly, the Sangha faces the Buddha one by one, right with the lay people. The lay people do not have to go through the Sangha to find the Buddha nature within. They have to simply turn around and look within. So how interesting. What does that do to hierarchy and power and lines of authority? It just destroys them, right? They don't exist. Sure enough, the Sangha are doing it full time, and the laity give them the basic needs: clothes, food, shelter, and medicine when they're sick. But the laity, if they cultivate full time, they can accomplish the fruits of the practice sooner than the monastics do. If the monastic is particularly lazy and doesn't spend his or her time cultivating, their haircut and their robes won't save them, right? So how interesting. Also, this last one is really key. In a time of when people are interested in self-liberation and exploring options, right? There is no sense in Buddhism that we are creatures and the Buddha is the creator. We are not sheep in the flock tended by the good shepherd, right? That split doesn't exist in Buddhism. That the Buddha is somehow up in the heavens, compassionately looking down at us and saving those whom he likes, who please him, that idea is just simply not there. The idea of grace, saved by grace alone, not the case in Buddhism. What saves us? Our own efforts, cause and effect. Very different, very different. Interesting to think about those things, right? So, orthodoxy and orthopraxy, right practice, not right belief, right words. An open canon, the teachings don't come by revelation from above through a prophet, right? It's horizontal, not vertical, the way the religion is organized. And there's no sense of obedience to an all-powerful being who saves us, but whom we can never reach. There is very much the case in Buddhism that the Buddha wants us to replace him. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? The idea is we become the Buddha when we actually do the work the Buddha did. At no time in any theistic religion is there hope that you too will replace God. That's called blasphemy. The cultivators of the way repeat the Buddha's experience and walk the same path. The purpose is to become another Buddha, another awakened human. How democratic is that? Cool, right? Ask the same questions, investigate the same principles that the Buddha did. Who am I, ultimately? What is my life about? If we had to say, what do we have in our world, here in Australia, that is the same role, that teaches the same way the Buddha did, it would have to be a sports coach, right? What is a sports coach like? Let's look at that first one. Well, the coach gets the team in training, builds them up, shows them better techniques, encourages teamwork, develops a strategy, trains his athletes in the strategy, and then sets you out in the field and goes, you guys go, fight, right? And if you do well, you score. But the coach stays on the sidelines. He can't do it for his athletes. He can only encourage them. The Buddha is the very same way. He can give us the model, teach us how, encourage us, but ultimately our cultivation is up to us. These are methods, the Dharma, all the meditation is one, methods that allow us to become the next Buddha as quickly as possible. Further, we have sutras where the Buddha says, don't believe in something only because others tell you it's right. Don't believe in a principle because you're told to, right? 11 reasons why not to believe in a principle. He deconstructs his own authority. Further, the Buddha asked that his teachings not be written down. Why would that be? Think about that. The idea was that in India back then, literacy was probably 5%. Most people were busy growing food. It was an agrarian society, right? Those who could. There was also merchants, right, trading, but most people were employed on the land. So who had time to learn Devanagari or Sanskrit or Pali or the Prakrits, right? Nobody had time. So as soon as his teachings are written down, they become the property of the 5% that can read, the Brahmins. The Buddha didn't want that. He wanted the Dharma to be available to the ordinary person to serve, to save them, right, from their pain. That's why he woke up and he wanted people to be able to follow him. So he said, keep the teachings in oral form, my mouth to your ears. Cool. He said, the mind is the source of the Dharma, not me, right? Look within. Take the precepts as your teacher, he said. When you live in a way that prevents mistakes without creating obstacles for yourself, you will be on the path to replacing me as soon as possible. So, all right. Man, oh man. We're going deep so much. How are you doing? This is hard to look out and see. If I could see your faces, I'd know, oh, no. Everybody's full. Good enough. Thanks. No more. Let's go meditate. All right. Good idea. We can go meditate. Well, got a song for you. Cause and effect song. Wise ones know we plant a seed with every word and deed. Once we plant it, here comes karma now. Sometimes good karma, sometimes bad karma. It'll make us happy, it'll make us sad. Choose it wisely, because here comes karma now. Karma isn't sent by heaven. It's not punishment either. Just sweep your own garden, because karma's coming. There's no lawyer you can call. The judge and the jury left the hall. Learn the rules, use good sense. This is cause and consequence. The Buddha called it the fundamental law of the universe. Like the seed is the fruit, you know the leaf, you know the root. Right? If you can understand that the tree has branch tips and roots both, and they're totally related, right? You can't argue with it. Here comes karma now. So conscience is a quiet voice. You pay your money, take your choice. It's your harvest. Here comes karma now. It's not luck. It's not fate. You can't negotiate. No fooling. Here comes karma now. Pretty clear, right? Plays no favorites, hears no lies, doesn't hear your alibis. You can threaten, you can curse, but you can't require the universe. Some are careful with the roots. They're contented when the fruits come. Plant and harvest, here comes karma now. But there are other people who are careless at the start, and at the end, ooh, when the time comes, there's no excuses, here comes karma now. You can smile till it hurts, help yourself to just desserts. Pay the piper, here comes karma now. You can blame the scapegoat, cry and wail, just ask Lady Justice with the scales. Blind justice tells no tales, who gets to go home but who goes to jail. There's no lawyer gets away, ain't no fixer you can pay. Just like magic, here comes karma now, right? Okay, so that's that's a kind of a harsh song, a little bit sardonic maybe, singing this. It's not happy, but it's true. So is that a good thing? I guess. Wise ones know we plant a seed with every word and deed. Once we plant it, here comes karma now. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, makes us happy, makes us sad. Choose it wisely, here comes karma now. Karma is not heaven sent, karma is not punishment. Sweep the garden, here comes karma now. Little computer break, right? There's no lawyer you can call. The judge and the jury left the hall. Learn the rules, use good sense. This is cause and consequence. Like the seed is the fruit. Know the leaf, you know the root. Can't argue, here comes karma now. Gee whiz. Conscience is a quiet voice. Pay your money, take your choice. It's your harvest, here comes karma now. It's not luck, it's not fate. No room to negotiate. No fooling, here comes karma now. Plays no favorites, here's no lies. Doesn't care about your alibis. You can threaten, you can curse, but you can't rewire the universe. Some are careful with the roots. They're contented with the fruits. Plant and harvest, here comes karma now. Need a third hand. Some are careless at the start, the end a broken heart. No excuses, here comes karma now. You can smile till it hurts. Help yourself to just desserts. Pay the piper, here comes karma now. Blame the scapegoat, cry and wail. Ask the woman with the scales. Blind justice tells no tales. Who goes home, who goes to jail? There's no lawyer gets away. There's no fixer you can pay. Just like magic, here comes karma now. Just like magic, here comes karma now. Just like magic, here comes karma now. Now, just like magic means what? It means it comes from invisible places. You can't see it, but it is the law of the universe, indeed. How about that? So, next week, we're going to talk about the mind ground, the place of creation. We're going to take the Buddha into the 21st century and bring it up to speed and identify some of the archetypes in our lives that could, really help us understand more about the Buddha and some of the freedoms, I guess you'd say, that the things that turned me away from the notion of an all-powerful God, that then made a lot of sense and brought me forward to the Buddha when I realized how different this notion of an awakened human being was, and what it meant for me. Let's see here. Sharing is paused. Why is sharing paused? There we go. Resume. Stop my sharing and share my screen. This is what I want. Right there. There we go. Thank you. Okay, we'll learn how to use the software one of these days. So, that's next week. Thanks for joining. I appreciate your putting up with such an academic approach. But what I'm sharing with everybody is a result of my being a person educated in the West, trying to understand this Asian import religion, right? And some of the, after 40 years now, some of the conclusions I've come to about ways to look at these principles that, and even in Asia, there's lots of folks who kind of grow up, who's the Buddha? Well, he's that fat guy over there on the altar. Or we automatically bow, but we never think about it. right? Or the Buddha is a big power, makes my grandma shake incense at him and give red envelopes to the monks. Well, okay, nothing wrong with that. That's culturally how it's come down after 2 millennia. That's not going to work in Australia, right? It's forever going to be an Asian import. It's not going to be ours. So Master Hsuan Hua was very, very savvy about ways to reinterpret this source of the Dharma, this awakened human being, that would make sense to Westerners. And so that's what I'm trying to share. And it's a lot in a short time, but maybe if people see us, myself or Sam or Cliff or Jin Fusher, the nuns at Gold Coast Dharma Realm, you could ask some questions that have been stirred up by some of the things I've said. And that way we can really have a dialogue about what's going on here. Because I'm unable to see you, don't know whether this is making sense or not, and that's really helpful when I get your feedback. All right. So can we share the merit now? Dedicate the merit? Maybe send it out with your heart as far as your mind can go. We'll talk about the mind ground and the Buddha on that level next week. Here we go. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Thanks for listening in, everybody. See you next week.